It's coming to the end of another year, so let's do another review. These are the highlights of Metroscapes in 2025. Let's go. Hey, it's Trev, and welcome to another Metroscapes year in review. This is my 8th one, and it'll be the 3rd in video format. And let's start it off by highlighting that 2025 was my 2nd year on YouTube. While 2024 was a big year for learning how to compile and layer everything, this year was continuing that journey and adding some additional complexity. I'm more efficient with collecting content, and this year I've pushed myself to be a little more creative with transitions and animations. I'm not as polished as other YouTube channels, and I'm still shooting in 1080p to keep my storage space down, but I'll continue with these baby steps. I was able to publish 5 videos this year, and 4 of them were just the Metroscapes walks that I completed. One of them was the multi-day journey that I completed across the West Greater Toronto area. I had actually compiled that earlier in 2024, but I messed up some settings when I was putting it together, and everything got jumbled around. So I actually had to dedicate a lot of time to fixing all of that, and I was able to complete that right at the beginning of this year. Another one was my journey along Etobicoke Creek in Peel region. You may recall that from last year as being my single longest walk ever. And one was my trip along the St. Catharines shoreline. I also completed an archive video, which was a picture feature of Toronto's Beltline. The last video is from a new series I started called Explainers, where I expand on the 4 realms that I explore and how I document them. I feel like I have a ton of web content, and there's not a lot of awareness of how to dig into it or where all of it is. So I hope that video helps with inspiring you to get out there and pursue your own adventures. As always, I've uploaded a bunch more videos, but they are unlisted. They're just the 1 to 2 minute clips from the middle of my walks, and they're embedded on my walk pages so you can see them there. With that, let's go over the walks that I completed this year. I completed 11 walks, which is the same as last year, and I covered 10% less distance, going 280 kilometers total, or just over 25 kilometers on average per walk. I hope to do more, but one thing that slowed me down this year was knee injuries. I crashed out pretty hard in May this year, and while I didn't break or tear anything, the bruising was really deep, and it took me several weeks to get back to normal after that. And then later this summer, I had a flare-up of tendonitis, so I had to go to physiotherapy for that, and that set me back as well. I did 2 walks this year along rail lines that are known as GO Transit's Lakeshore West and Lakeshore East lines. Lakeshore West was brutal due to the snow. It was much deeper and more difficult to traverse than I expected, but I did what I could. Lakeshore East was an interesting journey, as Durham region is still relatively new to me, and it was part of a larger infrastructure corridor featuring freight rail, passenger rail, utilities, and a highway. 3 walks were along utility corridors in the West GTA, and they were a bit different than usual. The first was a pipeline corridor spanning Burlington and Oakville. The second was a combined corridor between central Oakville and East Mississauga, with both an oil pipeline and a 230 kV transmission line. That one also had a historic piece to an old coal plant that was demolished 20 years ago. The third walk was a pipeline corridor across the top of Brampton. 5 of my walks were in riverine systems. 2 of them were here in the Greater Toronto area, and they had different flavors. One was following a man-made channel in Oakville, which cut off 4 streams and diverts the water away from their historical paths and sends it westward into 16-Mile Creek. The other was documenting hydroelectric infrastructure upstream of Niagara Falls. This includes a canal that was built over 100 years ago to feed the Beck generating stations, one of the largest hydroelectric facilities in Canada and the largest in the world when it was built. I also did 3 other riverine walks while I was on vacation in Ottawa. And being that I was on vacation, I didn't want to push it too hard. My journey along the Rideau River and Canal was pretty average, but my 2 journeys along the Ottawa River were shorter. My friend Kurt joined me for one of those walks as well, and he was an awesome tour guide and local resource. My last walk was along the shoreline in Pickering and Ajax, which got me closer to my goal of tracing all of the urban shoreline in the Greater Toronto Area. All of these walks together pushed me to a total of 3,100 kilometers over the last decade across southern Ontario. I also completed some project work this year. The biggest one was the Niagara Riverbanks project, which I actually wrapped up quite recently. Guelph was my first crack at doing this kind of project, where I chopped up the banks of the Speed and Aramosa rivers into over 100 pieces, classified their ownership and access, and categorized their land uses. Niagara was a bigger beast, as I covered urban portions of 12-Mile Creek, the Welland River, the Welland Canal, the Chippewa-Queenston Power Canal, and the Canadian side of the Niagara River. It had over twice as many pieces that were 6 times longer altogether. But as much work as it is, it's a rewarding exercise. It gives you a much better understanding of the structure of each system and the low-hanging fruit to improve access to each of them. I also created the North GTA watersheds, which covers a brand new basin, which is Lake Simcoe. I also updated a lot of my existing shoreline data based on first-hand walks and other ongoing projects. I also refreshed my Toronto Watersheds project using GIS. There were also a couple other random things that happened for Metroscapes this year. The first was being invited to a Civic Tech Toronto Hack Night. Civic Tech Toronto meets every Tuesday to work on projects, hear from different speakers, and network with others that want to use technology in some way to improve the city through civic action. I spoke about my walks and provided that background, but I focused on the data sets that I make and how I saw them as a tool for public advocacy. I'll put links in the usual places so you can check out my talk and Civic Tech Toronto itself. It's a great community and they do some amazing and empowering work for the community. So I want to thank them again for hosting me, and I want to strongly encourage you, if you live in Toronto, to go check them out. They're an awesome group. I was also featured in my local news outlet, which is called Guelph Today. Santana Bellantoni reached out to me on Blue Sky and asked to interview me about my walks and my advocacy work. Once again, it was a privilege to speak about Metroscapes and the different things I'm trying to achieve out of this project. So thank you again to Santana and Guelph Today for interviewing me. Another small thing I did was speak out about a proposed development at 155 St. Denis Drive in Toronto. Maybe not so much for the development itself, but for the 95% of the land that's going to be dedicated to the public open space. Ultimately, it sounds like the city is still appealing what I thought was a pretty clear decision by the Ontario Land Tribunal. And that sucks, because I don't think the city's going to win, and it's going to be at taxpayer expense. And it's going to further delay restoring this reach of the East Don River to a more natural state and fill this critical gap that is outstanding in the East Don Trail. For what? You guessed it, a golf course. It's such a waste of time and money. Looking ahead to 2026, merch. I teased it last year and I haven't been able to get there yet, but I really need to get something out there. I'm running out of storage space and I'd like to raise a bit of funding to expand that space here at home, as well as upgrade my website. I'm also hoping to finish the Lakeview videos. Once again, this was something I spoke about last year and I haven't quite finished it, but I do have it drafted now. I'm also hoping, once that is completed, to use that as an example for other features behind the fence and approach other organizations and governments to feature different upcoming Metroscapes. So that's it for 2025. Thank you for joining me in this review of my explorations where natural and built environments collide. And remember, friends, not all those who wander are lost. Take care.